inactive. Multiple new studies find that being inactive makes fat loss or weight loss almost impossible. It's known as exercise resistance. And I'm going to explain that shortly. This concept is a little bit hard to grasp initially, but after we share these images from multiple recently published studies, I think you'll grasp this concept. And you will now be focusing on staying active throughout the day and trying to walk at least 8,000 steps per day. Because if you don't, not only will that increase your risk of dying from all causes, but that will reduce your ability to burn fat when you actually engage in recreational exercise, like going to the gym or doing CrossFit or going for a hike or going for a run. Translation: if you're sedentary, it's hard to burn fat during exercise. And this is known as exercise resistance. And so let's dive into this. This is a fascinating paper by a gentleman known as Edward Coyle over at UT Austin. The title of this review is Physical Inactivity Causes Exercise Resistance of Fat Metabolism, Harbinger or Culprit of Disease. And there's a beautiful abstract here looking at individuals who are sedentary and talking about how this causes the inability to properly oxidize fat during exercise. But what happens is as we increase our baseline physical activity levels by walking periodically, maybe a 10-minute walk after each meal or getting up every hour and doing like just 5 push-ups, these little activities, these so-called exercise snacks interspersed throughout the day, enhance our body's ability to actually oxidize fats for fuel after we eat food, as well as after we exercise. And I think this is really important. I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with since 2006 that say, hey, look, I go to the gym 3 to 4 days per week and I'm gaining weight. I don't know what's going on. Most of these people either are truck drivers where they're very sedentary, they have desk jobs, office managers, CEOs, they travel a lot of sitting. And so it's very important that we acknowledge that just walking about 8,000 steps per day will help to ameliorate this so-called exercise resistance from being sedentary. So the investigators say physical inactivity is the 4th leading cause of death in the world. I still see, I was on an airplane yesterday, about 10% of the people were wearing face masks on the airplane. Some of them, I'm not kidding you, and I'm not trying to judge these people. Maybe they have rare immune issues or whatever. People are still double masking. But you can just look at their bodies. I can tell they do not exercise. And I'm not trying to be fat shaming, but you can just look at them and they don't exercise. So if we're so scared about a virus that has the infectious fatality ratio less than the flu, why aren't we focusing on exercise knowing it's the 4th leading cause of death throughout the world? The investigators say it is associated with a myriad of different diseases and premature death. 2 possible contributing factors are postprandial lipidemia, which we're going to talk about shortly. Essentially what that means is in the post-meal window, the triglyceride levels become supraphysiologic, and in so doing, they cause damage, the triglycerides, that is, cause damage systemically to the heart, to the muscle, to the liver, and initiate this snowball effect leading to poor metabolic health. And as the investigators say, the postprandial lipidemia causes atherosclerosis as well as impaired whole body fat oxidation, which contribute to obesity. And that's how we introduce this video. They go on to say acute exercise in physically active people is effective for increasing whole body fat oxidation and lowering postprandial lipidemia the next morning. However, in people who have low physical activity, i.e. less than 8,000 steps per day, an acute bout of exercise has no effect. That is, again, I want to say that in people who have low physical activity, who walk less than 8,000 steps per day, a 1-hour exercise session has no effect of increasing fat oxidation or reducing postprandial lipidemia, and this is known as exercise resistance. The acute harms of inactivity are not due to the lack of exercise and are more powerful than the benefits of exercise, they say, at least regarding to fat metabolism. The increase in mortality and reduced daily step counts is remarkably steep. Low background steps per day also impair the metabolic adaptations to short-term exercise. And so here's the model that Coyle et al. Have created to prove this hypothesis. So essentially, they have 3 days of relatively low steps in one group and then have 3 days of higher steps, more than 8,000 steps. I think they had people walk 4,000 steps for 3 days and then walk over more than 8,000 steps for 3 days. And at the end of the 3rd day, they had these individuals do a 1-hour bout of exercise at 62% of their VO2 max. The next morning, they had a milkshake that was high in fats, carbohydrates, and protein. And they wanted to look at post-meal fat oxidation and triglycerides to look at the postprandial lipidemia that I mentioned. And again, that is the post-meal rise in triglycerides, which we've talked about, the lipid load test. We'll get into that a little bit later. And what they found is that 1 hour bout of exercise didn't do anything to suppress the post-meal rise in triglycerides or increase fat oxidation in people who walked less than 4,000 steps per day. But that 1 hour bout of exercise after 3 days of walking more than 8,000 steps per day increased fat oxidation and reduced the post-meal level of triglycerides. So general take home here is that we should be walking on pretty much every day, at least 8,000 steps per day. And as someone who travels a lot for business, for work, I will tell you that this is totally possible. Yesterday, I was sitting a lot of the day, but I baked in exercise snacks. I was with Mark Bell. We did some podcasting and things like that. And after we filmed a 2-hour session, we went outside and did some farmer's carries, had the sled. We did some lunges, did some push-ups, got on the Concept 2, and then went back and did some recording, went to the airport, did a lot of walking. I was able to clock in 10,000 steps, and I didn't go really to the gym or do any structured things. So I think it's important that this is achievable.